One of my viewers asked for an update on my Serbian spruce. So here's a quick look at the largest one I have. In total it's about 5 feet tall, and looks like this last summer it put on around 9 or 10 inches of vertical growth. There's a little browning at the top of the leader I'm not too worried about, because Serbian spruce in general is pretty good about putting out an alternative leader. And you can see there I actually had to trim one alternative leader, or maybe more than one, that popped out after I guess this last winter it lost the leader, so this summer it popped out several alternate leaders, and here's the last one standing. I always try to keep a single leader and a single trunk on all of my conifers, so Serbian spruce is pretty good in terms of growth pattern. Here's another Serbian spruce. This one is growing in partial shade, and it also had some trouble with the leader at the top. So I've got it staked up here, and you can see down in there it lost a leader a couple years ago, and this one that I've got staked up to be the new leader is not quite as rigid and dominant as I would hope. And you can see it only put on about 4 or 5 inches of growth. These other side branches seem like they want to be the new leaders, so I may have to figure out what to do there, which one to trim. But in general, Serbian spruce is growing pretty well. And you can see, hopefully, the bluish undersides of the Serbian spruce. It has white stomatal bands on the underside of the needle, but the top is irregular green, so kind of a two-tone spruce. And you can see the branching structure. Sometimes those branches turn up at the end and it gets a really good two-tone coloration to it. Let's check out the other spruces now that we're on the subject of spruce and see how they're doing. First off, we have Oriental spruce, and that is growing in the nation of Georgia, southern Russia, northeastern Turkey. And unlike the Serbian spruce, which is a typical kind of a spiky feel to it, this one has a very small needle structure, very soft to the touch. The needles are not pointed, so if texture in terms of touching it or bumping into it is important, you may want to emphasize the Oriental spruce in your conifer planting. Growth is kind of variable. You see this particular one here put on about 6 or 7 inches of growth this summer. Let's check another one. Here's one that wasn't really growing well at all for a couple of years, but this past summer it shot up about 1 foot vertical. I think you can see that. And this other one behind it here, same story, 1 foot vertical this year and the year before. And it looks like sometimes it takes a while for the side branches to really materialize. So right now it's looking pretty tall and spindly, but I really like the dark green color of Oriental spruce. Here's a planting of multiple Norway spruces, and as a general rule, Norway spruce is going to be the fastest growing and most reliable spruce you can grow in Tennessee. And you can see it has the classic dark green of a Christmas tree and pretty much the appearance of a Christmas tree, which all spruces eventually have, but these are large enough to really look like a giant planted Christmas tree. And they grow fast, usually over a foot vertical per year, at least at this age. One thing about spruces is that they speed up in their growth rate the larger they get until they reach maturity. So these have been in the ground for about over 5 years now, and they're really expanding rapidly every year they're in the ground. So it's kind of exponential the way they grow when they're in this rapid growth phase. Norway spruce is good. A little bit, not as sharp as the Serbian spruce, but a little bit of a underside coloration, but mostly just dark green. This is the Black Hills spruce, which is a cultivar, really, of the white spruce. So I'm just going to call it white spruce, but Black Hill spruce is the most common cultivar of the white spruce found in horticulture, and actually, since it's pretty further south in the range and a drier area of the range, you could say that it's probably the best suited for growing in the south out of all the different white spruce cultivars. So here's a white spruce. It's been in the ground for quite a while, I guess over 5 years, and it's somewhat variable in its growth rate here. Some years it puts on 4 or 5 inches, other years just 2 or 3 inches. You can see it's got a lot going on up here on this particular specimen. Let me show you a few others. Here's a Black Hill spruce that looks a little better and looks like it put on about 5 inches or so of vertical growth there last summer. A little bit more of an open branching pattern because it was in mostly shade, and now the tree that was shading it has died as a result of armillaria, so it's going to be getting a lot more sun. So that will be interesting. Here's another Black Hill spruce I just put in the ground this spring. Looks like it also did about 5 inches vertical. Looking really good. Mostly sun. Maybe partial sun. It's right next to a Virginia pine that shades it in the afternoon. And then here's one that I temporarily have healed in. You can see it's not planted all the way, but I purchased this at Lowe's late in the summer, but it was too hot to plant, so I'll get that planted over the winter. And not in this spot, of course, and see how that does. So I'm pretty positive on Black Hill spruce, mainly because you can find them at Lowe's so commonly. Although I did find Norway spruce at Lowe's recently as well. Okay, those first 4 spruces that we went over, the Serbian, the Oriental, the Norway, and the Black Hills, are all relatively easy to find either online or at a nursery. Easy to find in larger sizes, easy to grow. Everything after that on the list is a little bit more esoteric, and you may have trouble finding them. And then when you do find them, they may be pretty small and require a long time to grow. So the best in this category of hard to find that I've grown so far in Tennessee is the Lijiang spruce, which I have talked about many times. And you can see it's almost a perfect substitute for the Colorado blue spruce, which would be the other spruce you can find everywhere, but you should not grow in Tennessee. But this one is a close substitute. Now, if I had a Colorado blue spruce right next to it, the Colorado blue spruce would be bluer. And I'll give you an example of that as showing you the Arizona cypress behind this one. Colorado blue spruce is just about as glaucous as that one, but this one's a close second, in my opinion, and it makes up for it not being as blue by having much better tolerance of the many fungus and mold pathogens that can affect the Colorado blue spruce. They're not going to damage the Lijiang spruce as much. As the name would suggest, Lijiang spruce is from China, southern China, central China, and I haven't had any problems with cold hardiness because this one was in the ground at -4, so it's summer hardy, winter hardy, and growing pretty fast now that it's starting to get larger. That's about a foot vertical, so thumbs up for the Lijiang spruce if you can find it. Here's the Yunnan spruce, also from China, and this one has a really different foliage texture from the Lijiang. Lijiang is pretty spiky and blue, and this one is not as spiky. The needles are smaller and at a very sharp angle to the branch, so they kind of stay close to the branch. And not really, there's a little bit of blue, but not like the Lijiang. This one I found on wilsonbrothersgardens.com, but sometimes you can find these on Forest Farm. Same for the Lijiang. You just kind of have to search the internet for it, but I've had pretty good success with the Yunnan spruce so far. Here's the Korean spruce, and these are pretty hard to find online, but this one put on about 2.5 to 3 inches vertical this year, even though it's fairly small. So I'm hopeful that it's going to be fairly fast growing as it gets larger and speeds up. The Chihuahuan spruce from northern Mexico is another one that can almost pass for the Colorado blue spruce, but it's a lot spinier and more prickly. And this one put on vertical about 7 or 8 inches last summer, and you can see it has these massive buds waiting for next spring, so I have a feeling it's going to put on a lot of vertical growth next summer. So far, I've been very satisfied with Chihuahuan spruce. Here we have the Koyama spruce from Japan, and you can see it also has a fairly noticeable bluish cast to the foliage. I'm super enthusiastic about seeing what this one looks like as it gets older and larger. This is the Budgeberry Blue cultivar of Koyama spruce that I purchased from Conifer Kingdom. And I don't think they have any more now, but keep an eye out for it if it shows up again. This is the Szechuan spruce from from China, actually, central western China. And it's kind of got an irregular shape now because I'm pretty sure this was a grafted branch, most likely grafted onto Norway spruce rootstock. But it has put on improving and vigorous growth each year that it's been in the ground, and you can see it also has that bluish cast to the foliage, so I'm hopeful that one of these leaders up here will become a dominant vertical leader, which may take a while with a grafted branch. But so far I have not been disappointed with the growth on this, and you can see it has a lot of buds waiting for next spring. This is the Qinghai spruce, also from central China, and it's been an inconsistent grower, but it looks like this last summer it did put on a solid 3 inches vertical there, and there's a nice central leader here heading into next spring, so hopefully it will start to go more vertical and be less of a spruce bush. And this is a Meyer spruce, also from central China. Sometimes you see these marketed online as a substitute for Colorado blue spruce, but this one's not very blue, and it's been extremely inconsistent with a lot of bud loss. You can see right now it doesn't even really have a good main leader, although maybe one of these branches over here will take over. But I'm going to leave it in the ground and see what it does, just for the sake of experimentation. Although I cannot recommend making a special effort to get Meyer spruce. This is the Schrenk's spruce, which grows in extreme western China, and it has also been very inconsistent with a lot of bud loss. So I would not make a special effort to try to grow Schrenk's spruce. This is Wilson spruce, also from central China. And you may have noticed I said that phrase like 5 times now. Central China has a lot of different species of spruce tree in general, and China does as a whole. So there's a lot to try here for Tennessee because central China is a lot more of a moist and humid environment that spruces grow in versus what you would find in the western United States, where it's more consistently dry and cold. So that's why I'm emphasizing Chinese spruces, just to try to find spruces that grow in a climate more like Tennessee's climate. Wilson spruce has been a very slow grower, but it has an interesting small and relatively soft texture to it. And up until maybe midsummer, it had always had sort of a lightish green cast to the foliage, but ever since I put down these white rocks, I think the reflective nature of the white rocks is increasing the amount of UV they get, and it's really darkened up the Wilson spruce. So I would say it's looking good now, and if you get the chance to try Wilson spruce and you have maybe a couple of decades to wait for it to get large, go for it. This is the tiger tail spruce from Japan, and I've got to say it's one of the most sturdy feeling spruces. The needles are incredibly rigid, fairly spiky, but they are not at all soft to the touch. It's a very rigid spruce. Seems to be a consistent grower, and whether it's hot, cold, wet, or dry, it just maintains this very dark green color, which looks really good. So singingtree.com, I believe, still has some tiger tail spruces available. I purchased one this summer. I haven't checked recently, but they did have them. But you'll just have to scour the internet if you want to try tiger tail spruce. But I do recommend it.